greatest fear is that no matter how much she admonishes Yumemi for being constantly distracted, no matter how much she tells her that her obsession with that place is harmful, no matter how much she pleads for her to concentrate on living in the world around her, when her best friend is at her most desperate, Ichigo can ultimately do nothing. And Yumemi's heart will continue to drift away out to that other world, above the clouds and beyond the walls of time, where Ichigo herself cannot follow. And it's this despair, this frustration, and this anguish that is so well captured in such a short period of time. When the haunting theme is sung over the ending credits, I hope that you will all feel as I did, that whether or not the same can be said of its predecessor, this is a story that will not be soon forgotten.
Talk to you about They Were 11. Who has heard of this movie, if anyone? I see like 4 or 5? Okay, maybe as many as 10 people, but it's good. You're going to hear about a great show. Or a movie, actually. Alright, so basically this is well-written and character-centric science fiction. So, what do we got in this movie? Well, it's going to be, you're starting off with the toughest exam.
I finally got to work again.
A very elite group makes that experience. We've gotten to the stars, alien races, they all want to compete to be in this awesome place. And there's going to be a practical skills segment to our exam. So we go off in these ships, and test groups of 10 people to basically this beat-up, awful-looking ship where we're going to take our exam. And then when we get there with our 9 other companions, uh-oh, there's an extra person here. And that shouldn't have happened. So immediately we've got a pretty interesting setup. The test does not stop. The test just goes on. So what's the test like? We're going to crew the ship for this many days. If there's a problem the crew of the ship cannot solve, they need to push that emergency button, which is inside that console there. And if any of them fails, they all fail. So already we've got an interesting setup. The 11 people that crew the ship are a very unique group, as you can pretty much see from the picture here. They've all got a lot of different motivations. This guy's a king, so he doesn't have anything to prove, except, that he's actually a good person. Not getting anything out of being here. This guy wants to be a space engineer. This guy is a cyborg, sort of, who wants to find a way for his race to live longer. So they're all here for a lot of interesting reasons. And they tend to group together really quickly. Like 2 of them are basically royalties. They're like, oh yeah, we're buddy-buddy, this is going to be cool. A bunch of the techs sort of group up together. They're going to be like, yeah, you know how to run things. These 2 just kind of sit back and watch. They're going to see what everyone else is up to. And these guys, like your engineers, they're going to fix stuff. And of course, you get your main characters. What I love about the show is that they all have elaborate, 2-part names. But they're all, in the end, they're all going to get nicknames. Just like you probably would in a situation like this where you used to refer to people quickly under crisis. So it's nice that the show goes that far and gives everyone a nickname. And the best other part is everyone on the place is competent. There's no one that's like whining, there's no one that's the weak link. All of them pretty much know what they're up to. Remember, they had to pass one of the most difficult exams of all time. So it's great to watch a show where everyone carries their weight all the time. Like, that's great. So they're dealing with this problem. First of all, there's the test. The ship's breaking, and there's bombs planted by the testing staff to make things even harder. Because dang it, this is the hardest exam. And you need everyone's expertise on your team. At the same time, there's this other guy there. You don't know what he's there for. Is he a saboteur? Is he there to kill one of your members? And then there'll still only be 10 you get off, so no one knows the difference. What's going to happen? So alright, the ship is crippled, like I mentioned. And the computer's very cheery. And there's all these great explosions going on because they plant them all over the thing to make it harder. And crew are going to get injured as part of this, so that's not going to be so cool. There's always more, like, once you think you've solved the problem, there's always a new crisis. And the leader here, it's very demanding. He never knows what's the test, what's sabotage. Is the 11th guy causing trouble? On the other hand, I do like that everyone just accepts that because he is royalty and has commanded a planet, he knows what he's talking about. No one tries to, take him out and be the leader. Everyone's like, yeah, we'll follow that guy. And of course, the 11th member is always on their minds, as I mentioned. So here, the 2 of them are talking, geez, who could be the 11th guy? We're not sure. And the tempers get short in a hurry on board this ship. The crews are going to take sides. Someone might get accused of being the 11th, and then they're like, no, I don't think he is this. I was like, well, yeah, no, totally is. And then, at some point, they find weapons, and you think, oh, is this going to be like Lord of the Flies? Are these guys just going to start killing each other? It's the kind of movie where you'll be asking, hey, if I was on board that ship, what would I do? Would I just push the button and end the thing to get everyone off of their safe? Do you think that using those guns is a good idea or a really bad idea? Who knows? And there's the setting. Now, this is a relatively short movie, about 90 minutes, but it packs an awful lot of neat stuff into it. It's not just generic sci-fi. They've got the culture of the ship, which is like this human ship. They argue about the philosophy of what they're seeing on board the ship. It has an interesting and well-translated history of the ship on plaque, which I thought was a nice touch. And there's a lot of interesting details of the technology, like they replace standard copper wiring with these cool things that grow wiring. And the movie even makes time for a bit of fun with a completely unexpected food fight, which took me by surprise and was delightful. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, even the king gets it. The ship also holds, in addition to all of its other problems, a forgotten past. And like, that line, maybe taken out of context here, but in the context of the show, it is chilling. You're like, uh-oh. Like, what is going to happen on board this ship? So is anything going to keep you from watching this awesome piece of sci-fi? Well, there is one thing, and I want to warn you ahead of time. It's very chauvinistic for no reason I can determine. I think it's probably like the director. I mean, I'll let you be the judge of some of these scenes, though. Like, oh yeah, well, girls might not be as smart. If they try really hard, they could be as good as us. Like, it's sort of that kind of thing. Or, oh geez, that's not very nice. Or my personal favorite, like, example here. Well, that's just me. That's just me. So, join the crew of this ship here, in which there should be only 10. Figure out the mystery, and join us there. This is where the information, it's a little hard to pick up, but they are available. About 90 minutes of movie. So, watch it. Thanks.
Sci-fi stuff. I'm going to throw it out there that I've not watched the TV series or read the manga for Jing, so if I say things that you're ready to throw things at me for, sorry about that. But anyway, so the show's going to kick it off with the fact that we're all in prison. That's always good. This isn't just any prison, guys. This is the one prison to rule them all, right? The greatest prison of all time, Seventh Heaven. Yes. Well, anyway, this prison is up against the greatest bandit film of all time, so things should definitely get interesting. So the OVA is split into 3 parts. The entire thing is 90 minutes long, each chunk being 30 minutes. And the first one is going to be Lost in Seventh Heaven. I want you guys to be keeping track of the titles of these OVAs because they play very heavily into the theme that gets tossed throughout the entirety of the OVA. So our first one is Lost. Now already you're kind of intrigued because these are the guys running this place, and you're like, that's cute, but I can't see why this is a top security prison with you 2 jokers in charge. And then already things get a little weird. Like this guy tries to, take on Jing a little bit. Jing's too cool for that and beats the stuffing out of him, and that's just bizarre. Weird stuff is happening, and then we get thrown a story, right? A long time ago there was this magician, he made dream orbs, and he sold them to people so that he could make tons of money. And if you're anything like here, you're like, that was a little sketch, don't you think? And Jing's like, well, yeah, that's clearly why he's in here too. So, that's an interesting story you guys got to keep track of and follow. So then we're going to get some neat visual imagery. And one thing that's really amazing about this show is that they don't waste any of your time. Like, there's no fluffy shots, there's no, camera pans for no purpose. When it's showing you something, you better be paying attention. All of these things that they're showing you have some sort of relevance, some sort of meaning. There's another reason we think this place is a little weird. This guy seems to have lost his pet, ginormous rat. And it turns out that rat eats him. So as though he's made of candy or wax or, something that isn't really human. But what I got from it was the fact that death itself isn't really taken seriously in this place. Like, out of him flows a bunch of, magic tricks. Like, death, magic! And you're a little bit confused, as though we're in some sort of dream. And we get some really, pretty animations out of this. All sorts of bizarre thoughts are running through our heads, right? We're not really sure where the heck we are. And then she appears out of nowhere. But remember, like I said, everything that's in the show is important. So we're not going to, she's not here for just eye candy or something. She's a very important part of the show. She takes us to a place that has some really pretty imagery. And now we're getting the real sense that we're kind of not so much much in a world that is completely real. You know, we might be in this dream world. There's more hints, more clues. You really need to be piecing everything together. Take everything in and log it away somewhere, because it's going to come back to you. So we meet these people at the end of this giant bizarre maze, and they're the occasions, and why they ride a dodo train you can't seem to figure out at first. You're like, well, we're in a dream world, right? Anything can happen, but there is a connection between them. Both of these things don't exist. This is a place where lost things come together. Okay? We also get a sense of things that aren't going right because Campari is apparently fused with Seventh Heaven. So now all sorts of crazy things are happening. But it's going to get interesting, right? So we're going to ask ourselves some interesting questions. Are we dreaming within dreaming? Jing wakes up and you're like, did he just dream all of that? You'll have to think about that anymore, personally. Because you're in trouble if you're having a dream. So now, not only is Jing lost in Seventh Heaven, he finds lost things, but you two are a little lost in Seventh Heaven. So now it's time to take a dream through Seventh Heaven. We're going to get asked some bizarre questions because Campari himself shows up finally. He's going to tell us another story. Keep track of these stories, guys. They're going to stack. They're going to come back. They're not just there for fun. And he's going to show us a dream. And in this dream, we get to see Jing's backstory, which is a little bit bizarre because it starts off okay, I guess, but then it gets a little bit weird and fantastical. He lives in this tree house in the middle of nowhere. His friends come to visit him. He's a friend of a girl. There's apparently some forest spirit that snatches girls for no apparent reason. There's like strange characters that live in his town. His town is almost like Halloween town. Like, it just doesn't look right. Then the thing that caught my eyes is Jing's walking around, he finds this pinball machine, which just happens to run on things that look a whole lot like dream wars. And I'm beginning to wonder, as I hope you're beginning to wonder, if his backstory is beginning to merge with the dream. Is his backstory a dream? Do we really understand what he's thinking and what he's feeling, or are we just getting another illusion, right? Because these dreams seem to have scores, and maybe it's the dreams that are running the show. Like, maybe what we're watching is just a giant compilation of other people's dreams that Campari is collecting. Maybe this isn't even a backstory. We get interesting info, but remember, I'm going to leave this to you to figure out, right? Because we may, in fact, be dreaming in Seventh Heaven, right? Dreams are created from our memories, so it's something you get to piece together and figure out all by yourself. So now we come to the last piece, where I told you that girl was important, so we're going to follow her for a little while. She seems to want to do a lot of things, but she seems just as trapped as Jing in this world, even though she has an important part to play. Then we meet this clown, and he's important because he's got this. I'm not going to tell you what this is, but I'm hoping you're taking all this visual imagery in. And now we're back to being chased around in the street, but, you know, we're really having problems now. We're definitely trapped in a dream world, and we got to get out. But here's the thing. Sometimes when you're trapped in a dream, it seems like it's the better place to be, right? If you have nowhere to go, maybe being trapped in a dream is the best place to be. And that's a question we have to ask Campari himself, because he seems to be pulling all the strings in this place. Why is it that he's here? Well, what is it that his motivations are? This line is very important. I actually showed it to you before. I'm wondering if you got it. And that starts to make him a little nervous, you know, because he has a very dark past, which seems to keep him here. And what are the emotions that are driving this bizarre Seventh Heaven world? Is it just a dream? Sometimes in our dreams they tell us things, you know what I mean? So we begin to wonder if a lot of those things were important. And they are. Like I told you, everything's going to stack. This is where all sorts of things come together. The third OVA does an amazing job of stacking all that information that you have seen before. So how are we going to get out of an endless dream? I'm going to leave that to you guys to watch and enjoy. But this is a little bit about it and how you can get a hold of it. So I certainly hope you watch.
All right, so up next we've got this lovely show. So how many people have heard of Princess Tutu? So crucially, I see those people back there and a lot of other guys. And you know what, guys? If you're like me, and you're a chiseled giant, now you've probably heard the name Princess Tutu, and you thought it looked like that. I take that back. It probably looked a little bit more like that. I'm here to set your mind at ease. Yes, there's ballet in the show, but it is interesting. There's also a really well-told and complex story with all kinds of cool elements in it, and action as well. So let's take a rundown of our characters, starting with Ahu here, who's kind of clumsy. She's the protagonist, and she turns into Princess Tutu of the type, who's graceful, skilled, and knows all the ballet. Then there's this guy, the prince, who she's been chasing after. The princess knight, who takes his job way too seriously and is kind of a jerk. And the perfect classmate who's better at everything. Also, Ahu's wonderful friends, she'll pretty much constantly torment her. Look at them go. So yes, ballet is a central element of the show, and I find myself learning a couple of things about it, which are pretty interesting. But that doesn't mean there isn't time for plenty of comedy with these two. Or romance. And then, of course, things start to get a little dark, because the Raven is coming, and he is bringing some pretty bad things to the show. So things aren't going to stay peaceful in this ballet world for long. So what's our plot run? Well, it seems pretty simple. The prince's heart was shattered in all these little pieces, and now he's kind of this emotionless shell. And Princess Tutu is going to get all those pieces back into him. Okay. So, and of course, there'll be a little bit of a love story. Now that seems pretty simple to you, right? Kind of cut and dry. It's just one of them collect all the pieces shows. But wait. A little bit of hang-up, he might already have somebody he's romantically involved with. And she might be a duck. Puts a damper on things, and maybe, if she confesses her love, she vanishes forever. So, alright, that's a little tricky. And maybe this guy, the knight, doesn't want him to get his emotions back, okay? And maybe the prince doesn't want them back either, because a lot of those feelings are things you don't really like. So suddenly, things are actually getting quite a bit more complicated than they seemed at first. None of this stuff is really working. And then, of course, there's this jerk, who is going to come to the story, and is starting to influence the town, and all of his agents are after the prince. And then there's a bunch of other subplots going on in here, and geez, now it looks downright complicated. Which is why I like shows, because complex is good. Simple is bad. But it might seem to you like this is an awful lot for one town to hold. And you'd be right. The town itself is a very strange place. It's a place where everything is just a little off, a place where a lot of stories come together, and it's almost like it's just the stage for all of these bizarre stories we played out on. It also has a lot of fantastical elements in it. Like, it's just storybook stuff is every day. Like, nobody thinks that's weird. It's a lot of fairy tale kind of things. And so you're thinking to yourself, what's the overall story of this town? How does it all come together? Well, you might not know, but this man. This man, Rensselaer, seems to control the story. Yes, the story is there, but he is outside of it. He controls it from without. He can send in agents to influence what's going on. He might personally intervene to change the direction of things. And he might just change the plot, because he can do that. So, nothing really seems to be on his grasp. Yes, Princess Tutu is just one of his many things that he wanted to happen. And he wants to be told a good story. And for him, a good story means, well, that the bad things happen to good people. He wants tragedy. And that is really interesting. So, alright, now all the characters, of course, don't want tragedy. They're going to fight against that as hard as they can. They might do it with words. They might do it with dance, of course. Or they might do it with actual weaponry. So, I mean, there is some action there. So, it's not going to be an easy fight because the story itself is against them. Like, the ending has sort of already been written. Uh-oh. And even if you fight against it, he's just there to make sure that's better for him. What a jerk. Now, that might make it sound like this is pretty serious stuff, but don't worry. It's not always serious. In fact, let's have a look at one of these delightful episodes where this guy shows up. I mean, just look at this guy. Ladies? Just look at his grace. He's so handsome. He's so charming. He must punish himself because he not gives love to all ladies of the world. A lot of other things in the show are weird too. I may have mentioned the fairy tale setting. Well, a lot of people in their school are just, they're all animals. It's a little weird. You're going to laugh, even though everyone else thinks it's normal. Just another everyday class, Like this, and of course, all of those people are nothing compared to the teacher, Mr. Cat, who is very strange. He's a very strange man. Fortunately for all those kids in ballet class, like, the piano man has their back. He's awesome. All of his friends, who I may have mentioned, have her back. Well, maybe they've got her back. I don't know about that. You know what? I take that back. Like, that is kind of interesting. So now the show is amazingly crafted. Like, a lot of it is classical music. All the themes of each episode are basically set to appropriate music, and they all have an either ballet or classical setting, including characters. Like this character here. Now, she's this mechanical doll who's sort of being controlled by Rensselaer. She's one of his agents that he sends in. Her music is taken from Coppelia, a ballet about a mechanical doll, so it's very appropriate. Every episode at the beginning has a title, but also sort of the theme music for the episode is also shown. Like this episode here, which is modeled after another ballet called Giselle, in which like a bunch of dead brides try to dance someone to death. And the cast of the show and the story of Giselle become intermingled during the course of it. Now they have to act out that ballet to make sure that everything comes to a peaceful conclusion. So it's interesting, even if you don't really know much about ballet. And it's a lot more than just window dressing. Like, it's not just, oh yeah, today's theme is going to be Swan Lake. Like, everything from the stage, like it is a stage that they're on, to the costumes, which have a lot of, obvious symbolism in them, to the poses they're going to be using. You can see here that, you have the grace versus these harsh, sharp movements that the other character is making. And they dance like that pretty much the whole time. It's really like you're actually watching a ballet rather than just a show for like the pinnacle moments of the show. Now, I can see some guys there probably glazing over, so if you're like me, you may not know anything about ballet. I really didn't know a whole lot about it. But it didn't hinder my enjoyment. Like, the show is still really good even if you don't know ballet. And if you do a little research or happen to know it, you'll get even more respect for it, because these episodes are very well crafted along the lines of the storylines. Other things I liked about the show were the art. Now, the art in the show is actually really good, especially in certain pieces when they're doing a lot of detail work. But what's impressive about it is that it's not just, like, pretty art. It's also that the art says a whole lot without words. Like, let's have a look at this shot here. I mean, there's no dialogue in this scene, but you know what's going on. There's this sort of helpless girl, and then, this huge, powerful raven whose wings just cover the entire screen. And they don't need to say anything for you to know what's going on there, so it's done to great effect. Every episode also has these storybook-style opening scenes, which are really interesting, and in many cases amazing and highly symbolic, like this one. Now, a lot of these are another layer. A lot of them are subversions of fairy tales or similar stories, and they all have relevance to the episode, even if it doesn't seem like it. They help to set the mood every time. Like, here's an example where he took this twist on Sleeping Beauty. Well, of course Sleeping wants to wake up, because the prince is there. Or does she? A lot of them, these subversions, have this common theme. And the common theme to most of them is that there's tragedy and suffering in the name of love. Yes, love is the most powerful, wonderful emotion, but it can be made to do such horrible things to people. I wonder whose fault that is. Of course it's not. So for all of you, there's a lot of stories in here, like this knight in his true nature, the raven, who is growing in power, his agents as well, the truth about this town, which is still somewhat bizarre, and of course, Audrey and her friends, who are going to have lots of great stuff happen. So join the dance and find out what's going on, because you may be too beautiful for this show, but you can't be too many.
Life is tough from the beginning. You gotta make it by yourself. So here's our cast. Each one of them is terribly important to the plot. So, we're going to be following these guys, and they are such wonderful characters. So, like anything else, every character needs a name. And as it so works in Haibane and Renmei, your name comes from your dream. It's a really neat parallel because right there, names are things we don't give ourselves, right? Our parents give them to us. They're from an outside influence, and the Haibane work the same way. They don't get a choice in what their names are. Their dreams come from a place they don't really understand. So this character gets named Raka. She's the character we're going to follow through most of it because her dream is about falling. Another example being this one, who's Ku. She dreams about floating around in the air, so her name is Ku, her fear. So the Haibane got it a little tough right from the beginning. You're probably wondering what the heck they are. They seem a little bit like angels in the beginning because they have to wear these little halos, and it's kind of difficult. Raka isn't too good at it in the beginning, so she gets this amazingly goofy headpiece. So she has to wear it in order to keep the halo straight. But there's talk of wings, and those wings aren't too happy either. It's tough to grow those puppies. They don't get them from birth. They actually grow them a couple days after coming out. And the interesting thing is the show asks you what Haibane are. They ask themselves that question, and they have no idea. It's actually a question that's never answered. It's something that's just kind of thrown, pieces are thrown to you, but you don't really understand what they are. They tell you that, well, we call ourselves Haibane, we're kind of like little angels, we can't go outside. We don't really remember who we are. We're born through these dreams, but we think we came from another place. And you don't really understand why they're here. They don't understand why they're here. It's that kind of frustration as Haibane. But as humans, don't we feel that too? Don't we feel sometimes, why are we here? What are we doing here? What is our purpose here? They wonder those same things. To the town, they're kind of like good luck charms. So you're still getting the idea that they might be these like little angelic figures. The town really likes them and likes to see them. And the town, on the other hand, along with the Haibane, is really strange. It's got this bizarre background to it because there's all these things in it that don't really add up to a timepiece. You've got windmills, you've got clotheslines, buildings do have electricity, but then they use radios out of the 1960s, people still use horse and buggy. It's very, very confusing. Real people live here too, I do want to point that out. This isn't just like a Haibane town. People are living here. So it's almost like this dream world, and what really adds to it is the fact that no matter who you are, if you live here, you can't go beyond those walls. So if anyone has read Lois Lowry's The Giver, one of my personal favorite novels, it is very similar to that in that you've got this town in this world, and that's your world. This is the world you're going to try and understand and live through because you can't go past that, right? So another thing that the show really harps upon is the idea of not good, not evil, but somewhere in between. And what's beautiful is that as they're born as adults, and as children, we see things in black and white, right? This is good, this is bad, this is left, this is right. Right from the get-go, Haibane are born, and when they're born with charcoal gray wings, that is considered the best type of wings. Not black, not white, but charcoal gray. The understanding that the world is and always has had shades of gray. So it's an understanding right from the get-go. So now here's where we get a little confused. We thought they were these angelic characters, but they're a little bit like second-class citizens. They can't wear new clothing. They have to carry around this book with paper in it that serves as money because they work, but they're not allowed to have money. So it's a very strange phenomenon. Now, I told you guys that they can't go beyond the walls, but certain things can go beyond the walls, leading you to believe that there's something else out there, right? What are we always searching for? Something else out there. The communicators can go out there. They go out to trade, apparently, but they're not allowed to speak about what happens outside. They only speak through hand signals. The other things that are allowed to go outside are the birds. The birds are really important because they're said to carry things that we've lost. And we know Haibane have lost things. They've lost their whole identity. But despite the fact that they carry such, lost things, you're thinking you want them to be around, and they're not really appreciated, leading you to wonder why these, Haibane are chosen and brought over, and they don't really want to find things that they've lost. Sometimes we don't want to find things that are lost. So we grow with Raka. What's so amazing about this show is that it teaches you about the world by growing you with a character that is growing. Raka needs to learn to Haibane, and so do you. And you grow with her. You never know more than she knows. You're following her through every step of the process, through understanding what it means to be accepted into society, to understanding what it means to have an identity, to understanding what it means to make friends, to learn about other people. Your world can't just be made up of you, it's made up of you and others. You need to interact with other people. The show also touches upon really deep ideas, like people influencing your life, how much they influence your life, what it feels like when people die. This is a really important emotion that is touched upon incredibly in this show. People are there and gone so fast, in the same way it happens in real life, and that shatters characters. It leaves a lot of characters broken. We explore the idea of loneliness. We explore big, big themes, like why are we here? What is our existence? Questions that the show doesn't give an answer to, because we know we can't have an answer to. And it's amazing the way you don't get frustrated when they don't answer your questions, because you know that you just can't answer a question that big. This show reminds you that you have to fight off personal demons, because that is the only way we break free from sin. Sin is a big theme in the show. It's done really well, without delving into, like, copious amounts of ridiculous religion and stuff. It really touches upon what it means to feel like a sinner. Despite being in this world of paradise, sometimes you just don't feel like you belong. You feel like you're trapped. You feel like you're looping. You feel like you just don't understand, like you are a sinner. Is that what you are when you're here? So, I hope I've done as promised. I've told you everything and nothing about what this show is about. Like being a real person, this show is about diving deeper and deeper and just hitting more questions, just hitting more mysteries, just discovering. You keep figuring it out and you keep discovering for yourself what the world is about, and what this show is about, what these characters are about. So, I've watched a lot of anime, and at the end of the anime I'll say, okay, this was good, this was bad, this was so bad, I can't wait for you guys to see it at next year's panel, all kinds of things. This is the first and the only show that I have finished, and I have said, this was absolutely beautiful. From stage one to stage finish, it is a beautiful show, and I honestly, I can't recommend it enough. If the con that it's too slow for you is holding you back, please try anyway. It's fantastic.
Alright, thank you guys for coming. These are the 5 shows that we had today, so if you want to write it down or something, or remember it, that's good. Now we're going to be having a panel on Sunday, which is bad games, so if you're a fan of video games and want to hear us trashing, that'll be at noon. And I should mention that MD Geist and Princess Tutu are playing at this con. So you might want to open your book if you're interested, or for some reason want to see MD Geist, you're going to see that. Princess Tutu is also here.
So what's next? Now we're going to cut the room where we can stay here and watch TV.
Just we're going to go back through the Bandits and see another one of those
Let me get out and return.
like, I don't know. You can't trust. Don't trust Dave.
No, I can trust it.
Well, let me see.
Like if we saw it,
It's like,
If Takizawa didn't exist as one area.
why can't you tell me the right? I think I'm going back to the hotel after this kind of. You just want to go back. She wants to bring her quickly to the
It's a present. It's a trash.